Hi, welcome to Mork Unfiltered. Let's start with a tough question, and I want you to answer this out loud or internally. Have you ever felt lost, confused, or totally without direction in your career? Or maybe you're a leader, a founder, struggling to find motivation right now through the grind of what you've got going on. If so, this show and my story is probably really going to resonate with you. Today's intro episode, or episode 0, is really a story about my fall from grace. It's about when I hit rock bottom. But more importantly, it's also the story about how I rebuilt myself and found meaning and purpose in my life. And the good news about this for you is that all the techniques and the frameworks and the tools that I used are completely repeatable. So if I can do this, anybody can do this. And that's you. Mork Unfiltered is the podcast where we cut through all the BS on leadership, life, and personal growth. I'm Patrick Mork, a CEO coach, 2-time founder, 3-time chief marketing officer with experience in Silicon Valley, Europe, at Google, and at many startups where I was often among the founding team members and helped people scale companies to ridiculous heights. But more importantly, I'm also the guy who's been fired, flattened, but found fulfillment. So what can you expect from this show? Well, a lot of episodes will be like this one. Raw, unfiltered stories where I'm going to come out and share things that happened to me, how I dealt with them, the tools that I use, the techniques that I still use, all in an effort to become more resilient and become a better version of myself. I'm also going to share a series of high-touch interviews with successful founders, venture capitalists, other investors, business and thought leaders who will share some of their toughest stories from the heart. And I'm going to push them to be as transparent as possible. They're going to discuss some of the challenges that they've dealt with, how they've transformed their setbacks into success, and the tools that you can also use to improve your own leadership journey, both in business and in life. So let's get to my story and what brings me here today. This story started way back in 2017 on March 7th. And the reality was, I was in like startup number 6 or something. I'd been doing this CMO gig for a long time. It was a chilly day in March in Silicon Valley on March 6th at around 6 p.m. when I got a Slack message from my boss. And he basically said to me, hey, today for our one-on-one meeting, I'd like to meet in the conference room instead of by my desk where we usually meet. And I didn't really think anything of it. I thought, well, why? Fine. If he wants to meet at the conference room, that's great. I just grabbed my stuff and I wandered over to the conference room. And I opened the door and found myself in, one of these plain kind of vanilla conference rooms with a round table and a couple of chairs. But immediately as I opened the door and stepped in, I realized something was off. On the one hand of the conference room, I saw my boss, 30-year-old founder, very successful guy, kind of sitting eyes down at the desk, at the table with his hands kind of fidgeting under the table. And on the other side of the table, I saw, wait for it, the CFO and acting director of human resources. Dun, dun, dun. Now, I don't know about you, man, but, typically when the CFO or the acting head of HR shows up at a meeting unannounced, that is typically not a good thing. And I remember walking into this meeting room and I just felt like all the air gets sucked out of the room, right? And a cold kind of chill go through my spine. And somehow I felt that I was probably not going to need my laptop to go through marketing metrics and KPIs. But anyway, I sat down between the two of them and we started talking, and they started talking about my leadership, about some of the decisions that I've made, and about, how I was fitting in or not really fitting in with the culture of the company. And in no kind of shortage of words, they told me that, they'd had a conversation with the board, that they had found that some of my decisions and the way I interacted with other team members, the way I decided and managed things were a little bit questionable. And that although they appreciated all the hard work and the achievements that we'd had to date, they were afraid that this wasn't really going to work out. And I was told kind of the familiar euphemism of, we're afraid that this is going to be your last day at the company. And obviously, I was devastated, right? I don't know if you've actually been through this, or anyone out there listening to this podcast has been laid off. But, when you get laid off, it kind of strips away your whole sense of self-identity, your sense of self-worth, right? And, I'll admit it, man, I took a major hit to my confidence, to my self-esteem. On top of that, for me, it was not the first time I'd been laid off. I'd been laid off actually about 18 months before. I'd had a run-in with another founder, and that hadn't exactly worked out either. And so I was a little bit shell-shocked. And to make matters worse, a year before that, my wife had left me. And that had, caused all sorts of issues. I was all of a sudden living in an apartment by myself, not seeing my kids every day. If you've ever been divorced, you know what that's like. So as I went home that day, I was confused, angry, frustrated, anxious, and really a little bit depressed. And the next morning, I got up as I always did, between 5 and 6 a.m. And, I got my gear on and I grabbed my bike and I went out for a cold bike ride out in the hills of Redwood City. And I was so lost in my own anger, rage, frustration, anxiety. And I was, pedaling hard down this hill and like going full speed with my headphones on and, listening to some music and thinking about what I was going to do next. What did this mean for me? Where was my life going to go? And I had very few answers to a lot of the questions that I had. And I'm sitting there, I'm biking as fast as I can. And, tears kind of streaming down my face and like just this mixture of rage and anger and all that pent up emotion. I didn't see a couple hundred feet ahead of me a garbage truck that was pulling out into the road until the very last second. And all of a sudden the driver saw me and he like slammed on his brakes and, hit the horn. And I must have missed him, dodged him, barely by inches. And it was a real wake-up call. I pulled over to the side of the road. I leaned my bike against a tree. I got off my bike. I took out my phone. And I thought to myself, wow, what was the worst that could have happened? I mean, I was shaking. I was upset. And I thought to myself, what if I'd hit that truck? What if I'd hit it head on? Bam! Lights out, Flesh and bone melding with steel. That would have been the end of all my problems. The end of job search, alimony payments, self-esteem issues, frustration, confusion, financial worries. And that realization, which I hope you've never had in your life, really shook me to the core. And as I pulled out my phone, I made a phone call that I probably should have made years ago to a guy called Jim, who was an executive coach, a life coach, who had worked with me and some business school friends of mine and done leadership retreats in the past. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, Jim, I'm really messed up, man. I just lost my job. I don't know what to do. My ex and I split about 1.5 years ago. I'm really at a crossroads. There's not like some sort of YouTube video or chat GPT to help me figure this out." And I started working with him as a coach, and I spent the next 9 months, deeply working with Jim. Every week we would meet, for an hour and a half, and he'd ask me a lot of questions, take me through various exercises and scenarios, all in this quest to figure out, what do I do with my life now? Because all I knew is I couldn't keep doing the same thing over and over. Just the idea of like starting to network and interviews and, coffees and meetings and, talking to people about new marketing gigs, at XYZ startup, to launch some other widget that's going to be $1 billion unicorn. I really didn't give a shit about any of that stuff. All I knew for sure was that whatever I'd been doing the last couple of years was not working, and that I needed a radical change. And it was through that journey and that conversation that I came to the realization of what my purpose was in life, using a tool that I'm going to share with you guys here on this podcast. And, I all of a sudden realized that what I really wanted to do is I really wanted to give back. I really wanted to help others. I wanted to help others that were in a similar situation like me, not necessarily in tech, just people going through a really rough time at work and trying to figure out what's next and knowing that whatever they're doing was not working and that they needed to make a change. In effect, I realized through that process that I wanted to become a coach. I wanted to make complete career pivot. And so that's what I do. That's what I did. You know, I stopped working in tech. I went out and got my coactive coaching degree. I started reaching out to people that I knew were struggling. Some of them I didn't know they were struggling, just updating and see how they were doing. And I started working with them to help them get a sense of meaning and purpose in their lives. And that coaching really saved me. But there was one particular tool that I'm going to share with you guys today that really made a big difference. And it's a framework. It's a Japanese framework, and it's called the Ikigai. And the Ikigai is like, think of it like a Venn diagram. It's like 4 circles that overlap. And where they overlap is actually where you find your sense of meaning and purpose. And those four circles are as follows. The first one is answer this question of, what are you passionate about? You know, what really gets you excited? That can be a particular cause, like, you know, animal rights or the environment or whatever, or it can be something that really, you know, upsets you that you want to make a difference about, gun violence, or something that's happened to you personally, like, you know, maybe somebody in your family died with cancer and you want to cure cancer, right? But the first step to finding your purpose is really thinking about, what am I passionate about? The second step is, what am I really good at? And each one of us, even you, we're all good at something. We all have like these skills, these superpowers that, you know, sometimes we know them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes people point them out to us. You know, they say, hey, you know, you're really amazing at public speaking, or you're a really good listener, or you're a really good, you know, songwriter, or you're a really good actor, right? We all have superpowers and skills that make us unique. So that's the second thing is figuring out, what am I really good at? The third thing is, what does the world really need? Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be the world, right? It could be your community, your local community college, your church, your company, your neighborhood, your country, your city, whatever, right? But think about a big problem that you can solve that really helps, you know, a certain group of people, right? And last but not least, none of this matters, guys. You know, if you can't pay the rent at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? If you can't put food on the table, if you can't pay your rent, if you can't pay your utility bills, all the rest goes out the window, right? So you got to also figure out, can I get paid for doing this? So in my case, you know, I was passionate about helping people find their way, be better leaders, be better humans, find some sort of work that gives them meaning and purpose. The world definitely needs it. I mean, there's like 77% of people on average are disengaged at work, right? Most people you know and I know are pretty freaking miserable at what they're doing. So there's definitely a need. Obviously, you know, I found over the years that I can make really good money doing this. It really depends who my clients are, but I could get paid pretty well for doing this, along with other things that I do, like public speaking and running workshops, which I also love. And last but not least, I've been told, obviously, I'm pretty good at doing this, right? In the same way that I was a really good marketer, I'm a pretty good coach, I'm an excellent public speaker, I'm a great workshop facilitator, and I love making content. So that's how the Ikigai kind of, you know, applies to my own journey. And that's a tool that you can start to use to figure out where you should go in your own journey. And this is a little example. This story and this tool is a little example of what you're going to get from this podcast, right? This is the kind of stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you every couple of weeks, whether it's like my own journeys and my own stories, or whether, you know, I'm interviewing somebody like one of these investors or successful entrepreneurs or leaders who have been through their own struggles and have had their own tools. You're going to get this kind of content on a pretty frequent basis. And look, the reality, guys, is like purpose matters more than ever, right? The reality is 90 million people are going to lose their jobs in some way due to artificial intelligence over the next 4 or 5 years. That's just the truth, right? We're seeing how quickly, you know, this technology is being adopted across the market and how quickly it's replacing jobs. So when you think of like, what does that mean for me? That means that you're going to have to be really resilient, because you're going to have to reinvent yourself. Not once, not twice, but probably multiple times. And a critical component of reinventing yourself and bouncing back, like I did, is to know your purpose, right? The truth is that struggling is normal. Every one of us, people that you know, people that I know, your friends, my friends, we all struggle at some point in our life. Struggling is human, right? You can see this in every major religion and every religious text. That is just kind of, struggle is how we grow. It's how we become a better version of ourselves. So always keep this in mind. Purpose isn't just a destination. It's your sense of direction. It's a fundamental pillar of resilience to help you get back up and power through the most difficult challenges in your life, whether it's problems in your marriage, problems at work, health issues, issues with friends, issues with coworkers or founders. It's about how we hire. It's about how we build cultures, and it's about how we live. So anyway, man, if any of this stuff resonated with you, if you found this story inspiring, educational, useful, the good news is this is just the start. And I'm going to have a lot more of these kind of stories and a lot more free resources just for you in the weeks and months to come. So for starters, you can download my Mork Guide to Finding Purpose in the show description, the show notes. This is going to contain a number of exercises that I mentioned here and a couple of others from my best-selling book, Step Back and Leap, that are going to help to set you on your path and to figure out what you should be doing with your life and with your career. All right, so that's it. Thanks for tuning in today. Make sure to follow Mork Unfiltered wherever it is that you are watching or listening to your podcast so that you'll miss a single episode. And as I said earlier, some episodes are just going to be me solo talking about things I've experienced, my stories, some frameworks, and some tools. And other episodes are going to be interviews with founders, leaders, and folks who have gone through similar situations and have come out on the other side of these situations much stronger. If you're a big social media fan, I'm at Patrick Mork Official on all major social media platforms. Follow me there for updates on the show and more honest stories about failure and leading ourselves to success. And don't forget, knowing your purpose is a fundamental part of being successful. When you have clear purpose in life, you have direction, you have meaning, and you can get back up every single time you get knocked out. So here's to living a life of meaning and purpose. I hope to share more with you on our next episode. I'll see you soon, and God bless.